Let's be on the record in case number 2019CR495, captioned State of Kansas versus Tamon Jones. Would the parties announce their appearances, please?
May it please the court, Candace Alcarez appears on behalf of the state.
May it please the court, Mr. Tamon Jones appears in person via Zoom and by and through retained counsel Reginald Keith Davis.
All right. Mr. Jones, as Mr. Davis mentioned, we are doing this hearing by video conference, by Zoom. If you wanted to appear personally in court and have everybody get together, we could do that. But my understanding in talking to your lawyer is that you're okay with waiving your personal appearance and doing this by Zoom today. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, to take up your plea, I'm going to need to ask you some questions, okay? And in a second, I'm going to have my court reporter swear you in. Anytime I ask you a question and you don't understand what I'm asking, tell me that so we can talk about it before you answer, okay? I don't want you guessing at what I'm trying to ask you.
Okay.
At any time, if you want to talk to Mr. Davis in private, I have this thing I can do where I send you to what's called a breakout room. You and he can talk by video and the rest of us can't hear you or see you. If anytime you want to do that during the hearing, you just tell me and I'll send you guys there, okay?
Okay.
All right. Now, if you'd raise your right hand, my court reporter will swear you in.
You solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Jones, you can go ahead and put your hand down. How much formal education have you had?
Other than high school?
Well, high school. You graduate high school?
I graduated high school, and from high school, I went and I played college football for a while, and I got in a kind of bad car accident, so I moved back home and did college at home. I played semi-pro for a little bit. When I stopped that, I went to trade school for barbering, and I got my barber license, and that was pretty much it as far as my education went.
All right. Sounds like that's a pretty good long way. You read and write okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. Nothing about that car accident affected your memory or thinking or anything like that?
No, sir.
All right. As you sit here today, are you under the influence of any alcohol or drugs or prescription medicine that might keep you from understanding what we're doing?
No, sir.
Feel like your mind's clear today?
Yes.
Do you know what you're charged with?
Yes.
All right. And you know that you don't have to plead guilty. You could maintain your plea of not guilty, and you would have a right to a jury trial on those charges. Do you understand that?
Yes.
All right. And Mr. Davis just held up that information. I'm assuming he went over that with you, right?
Yes.
All right. Now, if we had that trial, Mr. Davis would assist you throughout that trial. He would confront and cross-examine all of the state's witnesses. He could call any witnesses that you wanted called. If they didn't want to come to court, he could use subpoenas to make them come to court. At that trial, you would have a right to testify, but you would also have a right not to testify. And if you and Mr. Davis decided you shouldn't testify, the state couldn't use that against you. In other words, Ms. Alcarez here couldn't get up and say, well, ladies and gentlemen, he must be guilty because he didn't tell you his side. Do you understand all that?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, finally, at the end of that trial, if there was a conviction, you would have a right to appeal that conviction to the appellate courts. If you didn't have the money for a lawyer to do that, one would be appointed to do it for you. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if we go forward with this plea today and I accept your plea of guilty, there's not going to be any kind of trial like that, either to a court or a jury, and you'll be giving up all those rights that I just talked about. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
All right. Before we went on the record, the lawyers told me what the plea agreement was. They told me that you were going to be pleading to, which count is it?
Count one.
Count one, Your Honor.
Count one, which is possession of marijuana with the intent to distribute, which is a severity level 3 drug felony, that in exchange, the state would be dismissing the other charges and agreeing to recommend probation to the court. Is that your understanding of the entire plea agreement, Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir.
Has anybody promised you anything besides that to get you to plead guilty today?
No, sir.
Has anybody placed any force or threats against you to plead guilty?
No, sir.
All right. There's nobody on the other side of that phone like threatening you or anything like that. Is that right?
No, there's nobody here.
All right. Mr. Davis, is that your understanding of the entire plea agreement as well?
Yes, it is, Your Honor.
And Ms. Alcaraz?
Yes, Judge.
Okay. All right. Now, part of that plea agreement, Mr. Jones, was that the parties are going to agree to probation, to recommend probation. You understand that I'm not party to the plea agreements, and I'm not bound by whatever they agree to as a sentence, and that I can give you any sentence that the law allows, independent of any agreement. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm sure Mr. Davis talked to you about what your criminal history is and where that would make you fall on the sentencing grid. Did he do
Yes,
that?
sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
and yet he's holding up that grid. I'm sure you've seen that before, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. Davis, do you have an idea where Mr. Jones falls on that grid?
Your Honor, we believe that Mr. Jones would come back as an H box.
All right, you agree with that, Ms. Alcaraz, to the best of your
Yes,
knowledge?
Judge.
Okay, so they think you're going to be an H box, and I'm sure Mr. Davis predicted for you what kind of sentencing you would get under that. But what I have to do today, until I see a report on your criminal history, is just assume that you have the very worst possible criminal history, so I can advise you that the maximum that anybody could get for this crime. Do you understand that?
Yes.
All right. So the maximum that anybody could get if they had the very worst criminal history possible is 83 months in prison and a fine of $100,000, along with 12 months of post-release supervision. Do you understand that's the maximum sentence?
Yes, sir.
All right. Mr. Jones, do you have any questions about anything that you and I just went over?
No, sir.
All right. Mr. Davis, do you know any legal reason why your client should not plead guilty?
We know of none, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. Given that, Mr. Jones, I will ask you to the first count, possession of marijuana with the intent to distribute a level 3 drug felony. How do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
All right. Now I'm going to ask Ms. Alcaraz to tell me what she believes the state's evidence would be. I want you to listen closely because at the end of that, I'm going to ask you if that's what happened, okay?
Yes.
Ms. Alcaraz.
Yes, Judge. State's evidence would be that on September 28th of 2019, the defendant present here today was speeding, and officers pulled him over for that. In speaking with him, he admitted to smoking a joint, and there was also an odor of marijuana coming from his vehicle. The vehicle was then searched, and the items found as a result of that search were a black scale, 2 mason jars of suspected marijuana, a metal grinder, baggies, and a pill bottle with an unknown drug inside of it. The suspected marijuana was tested by a forensic scientist at the KBI and was confirmed to be marijuana weighing 51.15 grams.
All right.
And this occurred in Wyandotte County. Location.
Mr. Jones, you heard what the prosecutor had to say?
Yes.
Is that what happened in this case?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, Judge. The location on here, Jesus. Oh, just says Kansas City, Kansas.
All right. So this all happened in Kansas City, Wyandotte County, Kansas, Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. I will find that the defendant has freely, voluntarily, and intelligently entered his plea. He's aware of the nature of the charges and the consequences of the plea. The state has provided a sufficient factual basis for a finding of guilt, and I do in fact find the defendant is guilty of count 1, possession of marijuana with intent to distribute, a level 3 drug felony. The other counts are dismissed per plea agreement. I will order a pre-sentence investigation and continue sentencing pending receipt of that investigation. Mr. Jones is a convicted felon. It's prohibited for you to own or possess a firearm, certain kind of deadly cutting instruments like dirks, daggers, switchblades, basically knives that could be considered deadly weapons. If you're interested in that, Mr. Davis can tell you more about what qualify My point being, before you decide to own or possess any kind of weapon like that, make sure you talk to a good lawyer like Mr. Davis to make sure that it wouldn't cause your probation to be revoked or new charges added, okay?
Okay.
All right. So it looks like my assistant is telling me that I could do one of two things. I'm looking at August 21st. I could do a 10 o'clock sentencing before pretrial conferences or an 11:30 after.
Judge, I have a 10 o'clock that day, so 11:30 would be better for me.
Mr. Davis?
I will be out of the office, but if it's Zoom, I'm assuming I can possibly do it.
Are you guys okay with Zoom?
That's fine by me.
Does state law permits sentencing by Zoom, Your Honor?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. No
Okay.
problem at all.
Let's do it 8:21 at 11:30 by Zoom. I'll send out the invite as soon as we end here. Mr. Davis, can you email me and probation? Do you have a PSI request form?
No, I don't, Your Honor.
Okay, I'm going to email you one right away. And if you can get it filled out with Mr. Jones, basically what's going to happen, Mr. Jones, is I'm going to send probation your pre-sentence investigation request, and it's going to have your contact information. And sometime in the next week or so, probation is going to reach out to you to schedule an appointment to come in and do an interview for your pre-sentence investigation, okay?
Okay.
All right. So I am going to set the sentencing 8:21 at 11:30 by Zoom. Mr. Davis, I will send you that PSI request form and invite to everybody as soon as we're done here. Are there other things we need for our record today?
Not from the state, Judge.
Nothing from the defense, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you all, Mr. Jones. Good luck to you. We'll see you in August, okay?
All right. Thank you.
You bet.
Have a good day, Your Honor.
We are adjourned.
Judge,
Yes.
the 1 o'clock is still, nobody else cares about this.